discuss that with you after I get done here.
Go ahead.
I'm going to be honest with you, I have no notes. I got a reminder that tells me to tell y'all that we're going to have a change-up service tonight. So let's see what the Lord's going to say today.
Go ahead.
I kind of wish the whole church was here. The crowd looks good, but I wish the whole church was here to hear this today. Chapter number 4, verse number 8, when it fell on the day that Elisha passed to Shunem, where was a great woman, and she constrained him. Everybody knows the story. I'm just going to read this to you. To him to eat bread. She wanted him to come in to eat bread from time to time. And so it was that as often as he passed by, he turned in thither to eat bread. And then the next scripture says, and she said to her husband, it goes from there. You may be seated in Sunday school today.
Come on.
Now, I am going to talk to you. I don't have a subject, but if I had to come up with one, I would come up with a thought. Be prepared to be stretched. Okay? Be prepared to be stretched, and you'll understand this as I get into this. Help me this morning, Lord. Help me this morning. Help me. Help me. Now, everybody knows this story, and I don't really want to take detail to detail, but I do think that there's some key points in this small story. It's not the whole chapter. It's just some key points here that I want to run by you that, I'll be honest with you, that I felt like that I needed to say to this church, because I felt this last week. I believe it was last week. Good to have Sister Victory with us today. Love you, sis. Thank you. All of our guests, thank you for being with us. There's something that's going on in this story that probably some of you know somebody, if you're not already there, can relate to this. And the relating is this woman that the Bible just called, and I read it to you, she was a great woman. Somebody say a great woman. Somebody say Sunday school. Usually I'm down there, but I decided to stay up here today if it's okay. Honored to be able to teach a Sunday class again this morning. Something about this woman that you have to understand is who she is and where she came from. You have to understand that this woman is a Shunammite woman, and because she's a Shunammite woman, she is a woman that was born and raised, and she is a native of Shunem. Shunem is not your ordinary place, especially in that day. Today it's changed a little bit, but there's some characteristics about Shunem and this woman that I feel like that is a necessity to talk to the church this morning about. And I'm going to tell you what I feel this morning, and you have to understand that her husband was not the same age as she was. She was a little bit younger. I don't really know exactly how much younger she is to her husband, but she has a life there in Shunem with her husband, and as far as I know, they're from the tribe of Issachar, and they have a great relationship, and they probably would have made a pretty couple last night at the Valentine's banquet if they'd have showed up, but they didn't show up for some reason. And you look at this man and this woman and realize that they have an empty nest. And I'm going to talk to you because I feel this already this morning. I want you to say that after me, an empty nest. Okay, the reason that it is an empty nest is because I don't really know how many years they've been married. And it doesn't say to us or give us an indication of how many months they dated before they married. And it doesn't even really give us their exact age, but we do understand that he is a little bit older than she is. Now this home that they have built to live in is a home that he has worked so hard to build, because you can have a refrigerator, stove, and microwave, and a couch and a bed, and it not be a home. We talked to you this morning. And it's not what you have in the house. I feel this morning. It's not what you have in the house that makes it a home. It's not your gold and your silver and all of your guns and your ammo and all of the precious things that's been handed down through time that is a souvenir to you. That's not really what makes your house a home. It's not the plywood. It's not the sheetrock. It's not the mud. It's not the carpet. It's not the flooring. It's not the cabinetry. That's not what makes it a home. Are you still with me today? What makes it a home is when a man and a woman can come together and they can build a life in this household. Are you hearing me? And that's what makes it a house and a home. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Without somebody living in the house, it's just a structure called a house. But when two individuals that will move into a home, to a house, it then becomes a home, because it's now what they make it to become. Are you with me? Are you hearing me today? Something is missing in this household, and it's an empty nest. Many years they've probably sat on the front porch and drank a glass of tea and talked back and forth, watching people pass by, because after all, this man is he's not a very extremely wealthy man, but he's a man that has a lot of land. He has servants. He has men that works under him, women that works under him and his wife, and they own a bunch of land there. They're from the tribe of Issachar. They're very powerful people, and they know the Bible. They know the Torah, okay? They know who God is, all right? Because the relationship between one another, man and woman and God, has made their house a home. Are you with me? They didn't just leave the word outside the house, they put the word inside the house. And so now you have to understand that the conversations between the two may go something a little like this. It's such a pretty day. Somebody's passing by on a horse and buggy, and they wave at them because they have seen them multiple times, and they've been coming through there for years. Maybe they've been to Carmel, because Carmel's not really too far from there, and they've bought goods, and they're headed back home, and they're saying, "Hey, neighbor, how are you?" And they're just having a small conversation, and life just keeps going on, and the glass of tea is empty, and she gets up and goes and grabs him a glass of tea, and they talk about how hard the day is and how hot it's been in the field today, and how many servants showed up, and some just decided to stay home like this morning. Can I be me today? It's not very long where these two people they're so in love, and every time they shut the door, lock the door to go in, their house is a home, because it's not what they have in there, it's who they are that dwells within the four walls. But every night they go to bed, I wonder how many times Daddy went to, the husband went to bed, wondering what it would be like to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and bottle feed a son or bottle feed a daughter. He's usually used to getting up in the mornings and going with a service and delivering cows and calves and stock and of that nature, and hand feeding and bottle feeding goats and sheep, and trying to keep the livelihood and save the life of a beast that he has delivered with his own hand. But how many times have he laid there and wondered what it would be like if he could hold a real bottle and put it in a real baby's mouth and feed a real baby? I'm sure he never shed a tear. I'm sure he never cried, but that doesn't leave the woman out, because now she is probably cleaning the house, making a bedroom, wishing that there was somebody that she could get up in the morning and dress for school, fix their hair, watch them get on the bus, and watch them grow up to be a man and have a great education and possibly be a farmer like their dad. But what a reproach it is to know that they don't have a son. They can't have children, even though they're inside the four walls was a home, and they were intimate many times, and they were together oftentimes, but nothing never happened between him and her that she could conceive, and so she has to live every day. And now she's not 20, she's not 30, she's not 50, she's probably somewhere around 60 to 62 years old, and she doesn't have a kid. Are you with me? I hope I got you right where He wants you. Because some of you that are older in this room could go back today and remember how you were raised and how you had children and how you raised your babies and how you sat up at night and you changed their diaper and you held them while their fever was spiking and you didn't understand what was going on and they cried in your arms and you couldn't hear what they were saying to you and you didn't know where they were hurting, but the love in your heart still held that baby. You could sit here today and reminisce what I'm talking to you about. You had good childhood. And some of you didn't have so great a childhood, but nevertheless, you had children, and you know what it's like to raise a baby. Are you hearing me today? I'm going to talk to you in just a second. I'm laying the concrete, because I want you to understand where we're at. I don't know how many times she's sitting on the front porch by herself with an empty nest. Her husband's out in the field working, making a living, telling servants what to do, sitting under a shade tree with a glass of Kool-Aid going, it sure is hot today, but when I get home, Mama, make it all better. Then one day somebody passed by and he didn't look the same, he didn't dress the same, didn't talk the same, and he was a man that she kept waving at him as he would pass by. She perceived in her heart that this man that was passing by was not from Shunem. There was no way he could be from Shunem because he didn't dress like the Shunamites. He didn't act like the Shunamites. And when he passed by, he was very cordial. He had a lot of character. He didn't misuse and mishandle. And behind him was always a servant. And his name is Elisha, the man of God, that was so different. And the man that was following him, his servant was named Gehazi. And so on every day that they would pass by, maybe once a month or once every 2 months or once a week, whatever, she would wave at them. And one day he comes in from work and she pulls his boots off and he eats supper and sits on the front porch and she strikes up a conversation with him and says to her husband, there's a man that keeps passing by here, and he doesn't look like us, he doesn't talk like us, he doesn't dress like us, he's very cordial, and I perceive, watch what the Bible said, and she said to her husband, I perceive that this man is a holy man of God. There's something different about him. And so the conversation between the husband and the wife goes something like this. Well, honey, what do you want me to do? And she says, and she pours her heart out to him and says, honey, I would love to build a room because every time he passes by, he looks like that he's hungry. And I bid him in and I'd like to bring him in and feed him sometime. And it looks like he's just tired on a journey and his service dragging behind him. And I would just like to see if I could borrow your credit card a minute. And go down to Lowe's and get a lamp and get a table and get a bed and get some wood and get some sheetrock and add on to the house because I'd like to build this man a room. I'm telling you, he's not your ordinary man. Oh, you better hear me today. He's not your ordinary man. So he says, here's the credit card bill. They build the room. Next time he passes by, she calls him in and says, I'd like to introduce you to a room that I have prepared, my husband and myself, for you and your servant, that when you're tired and you're hungry, you can come in and you can sit here, you can lay here, spend the night, wash your feet and refresh before you go home to Carmel, because Carmel is where Elisha's house is. That's where he has lived all of his life. That's where Elijah caught him before he left here, and so he has to go home. He has a house in Carmel. He doesn't need anybody to build him a house, but somebody saw that he was a holy man of God and decided to build him a room. And so that's exactly what happens. Every time he passes by, though she may not be there and he may not be there, the door is always open for the preacher to come in and relax and wash your feet. And I'm pretty persuaded that there's always biscuits on the stove. Now this is where it turns. You got to hear me today. Because from right here to the conclusion of this story is something that I feel the Lord gave me, not just for this church, but for other people that would allow me to minister to their congregation. Here's where it starts. Life is good, but it's an empty nest. Is God pleased with his house, that he's madly in love with the bride, and he desires to spend time and be intimate, but is it his desire to have an empty nest? Well, he passes by one day, and he goes in. Gehazi is standing there doing what he's supposed to do. Gehazi at this particular point is a very faithful servant. I know some of you are probably bored, besides Caleb. But I have to tell you what I feel. And now the man of God's laying on his bed. Gehazi is standing at the door as a servant. The man of God opens his mouth and starts talking to Gehazi. The woman is in her house, and this is kind of like a lean-to. Actually, when you read it, it's kind of like a loft. It's built up off the ground in a way, but he starts talking to Gehazi, and Gehazi hears the man of God and says, I'm listening, sir. And he says, I want you to go get the woman. She's over there probably folding clothes, or she's been to the creek to wash clothes, and she's telling her maids what to do, or maybe she's just talking. Maybe she feels good that the man of God is at her home, and maybe the blessings of the Lord is increasing even more. Maybe she's counting her blessings. But Gehazi knocks on the door and says, the man of God has need for you, and she follows Gehazi over, and of course of order, the way order is, read it for yourself when you get time. Gehazi is standing there with the woman. He does not talk to the woman. The preacher doesn't talk to the woman. He talks to Gehazi while she's standing there and says, I want you to ask her, what could we do for her? For she has shown us kindness and care for us. What could we do for her? Could we go to the king and talk? Could we go to the army, the captains, and talk? And she said, and so he turns and tells her this. And now she says to Gehazi, you could tell the preacher, I'm among my own people. Are you with me? Are you with me this morning? I don't need anything. Okay, because this is what's going to turn right here. Okay. She leaves and walks out. He asks Gehazi, well, then what do you think that she needs? He says, well, sir, can I just be honest with you? I have perceived this many times as we've been by here that her husband is older. And she is not as old. But they don't have a kid. They have an empty nest here. They got all of their stuff, sir, but they don't have a kid. It's a reproach against them. Hear what I just told you, church. It's a reproach. Let me say, it's a reproach that I have children and have an empty nest. She comes back out there and he says, I want you to tell her, and this is where it's going to go right here. I want you to tell her at the time of life in this season, at this season, he said, watch what he said, at this season, at the time of life, she will embrace a son. You know what she said? She screamed out and said, don't lie to me, sir. Because you could tell by her response right there was something inside of her soul for all of these years has been craving and desiring just to have a man-child or even a daughter in her, and to never have to wake up to an empty nest, to have somebody that she could raise with her own hands. You could tell by it just stunned her that the preacher would say this. She walks away. Now, you can only imagine what she's doing now in her house. She's probably chirping. Now, if she was in 2023, the first thing she'd do is put it on Facebook. She'd call her best friends and do a group chat and go, you won't believe what I was just prophesying. She would be telling everybody that she came in contact with. Everybody, the president would know. Because she's so happy that the preacher said to her at this season, I want you to watch this now. I want you to get that at this season, at this season, at this season. Now, let me take you on a trip. Let me tell you why Shunem is such a phenomenal place. Shunem is like, and I've made this mention before, Shunem is like Pigeon Forge. Shunem is like Gatlinburg. It's a place where you visit, and their job is to lure you in, make you feel comfortable, and show you goodness, and show you kindness, and offer you deals, okay? And their hospitality keeps drawing you back every 3 or 4 months because you love their hospitality. And the people that's in Shunem is in the exact same way. But the only difference between Pigeon Forge and Shunem is Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge pulls you in to get something out of you. But Shunem is a people that will pull you in to give you something. Just like the hospitality of young women. Why do you think that they went and got Abishag to lay in the bed and minister to David at 70 years old while he was dying? Because Abishag is from Shunem. Abishag knew how to treat a person. Abishag knew the value of dealing with people that were on their way down and on their way out. Abishag was not your ordinary lady because she was from Shunem. Why do you think out of all of the women that they could have picked, they picked Abishag? Because she knew hospitality. She didn't mess with David. David, the Bible said, knew not her. He didn't try to mess with her. She ministered and kept him warm because his blood pressure was horrible, and David was 70 years old and died. And why do you think out of all of the women that were there, not even his wife was even in there with him when he died? They called Abishag because Abishag's from Shunem. The Lord gave me this. He showed this to me. Abishag is from Shunem. Abishag knows what to say. Abishag knows when to say it. Abishag knows when to put the covers on. Abishag knows when to take the covers off. Abishag knows when to put the ice in the mouth. Abishag knows when to feed when they're hungry. And she doesn't complain. And she doesn't find fault. And she doesn't blame nobody else because of her position. Hear me when I'm telling you this morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's not the will of God to have an empty nest. Here's where it really gets challenging for us. Because watch this. He said at this season, at the time of life, you will embrace the Son. Now, 12 months is the season. So you have 3 months of her husband and her coming together, being intimate at an old age, and conceiving. But what a point. You can't tell me when it happened. I can't tell you when it happened. But sometime between the first night and the 3-month period, it was just right. And all of a sudden, 2 months passes after she's done conceived and she's feeling different. This is where I want to talk to you at, right here. Now she's feeling different. She had morning sicknesses, looking for a cracker and peanut butter or something. Her body's changing. Her feelings are changing. Her emotions are, when she would stand up and fight a bear, now she wants to sit down and cry because her stay with me, okay? Mothers, you know what I'm talking about. Daddies, that you sit by your wives and you saw in her, you know what I'm talking about. Here's the thing. Here's a problem that we have. Wouldn't it be a shame for her to look at the man of God and say, I don't mind being pregnant, but I don't want to lose my figure? You better hear me right here. It would be a crying shame for her to have a mentality. The man of God, I can carry twins, but don't you let me gain a pound. I don't want a stretch mark. I don't want nothing sagging. I don't want nothing out of place, because I have a profile I have to carry. And I know we're laughing about this right now, but I'm as serious as death right now. What kind of foolish woman would ever tell God, I want a child, but I don't want you to change my being? So let me apply that to you. Because before you can have a child just like this woman, you have to put up with some things. And the first thing that you've got to understand is your lifestyle has to change. What you used to do, you can't do anymore. And where you used to go, you can't go anymore. And what you used to ride and wrestle with, you can't do that anymore. And the things you used to eat, you got to cut it out because it's not going to be healthy for the baby. And because of that, and if you keep doing that, then you're going to raise up a malnourished child because we don't want an empty nest. And here's the challenge, is how in the world can God give us a child and not have a, and I'm talking spiritually today, without stretching the church. The church has to be stretched, ladies and gentlemen. You have to get out of your comfort zone if you're going to have a baby that's going to be healthy. You better hear what I'm saying today. Because after 3 months and 4 months and 6 months and the trimesters are coming on and they're coming on strong. Let me tell you something about this woman. I don't care. She didn't care how many stretch marks she got. She didn't care how out of whack her body got. Because what was in her, just like her house that had 2 befores and walls, it was just a house until her husband made it a home with her. Just like her body, hear me today, it was just a house, but now she has somebody in there and it's a home for that baby. Why can't we be the same way in the church? Because here's my fear, and I got one more element here I want you to discover. You have to be willing to be stretched. If you're not willing to stretch, this church will never grow. You could sit here with your 4 and no more and twiddle your little fingers and shove your glasses up on the end of on top of your nose and go, we got it and this is what we need and this is what. No, that is not the will of God. The will of God is that every chair in this place that's empty right now is filled with people that's on drugs and alcohol and busted up marriages and listen to me, had no mama, had no daddy, had no future, had no nothing, don't have a car to drive, don't even look. They look all, that's God's will. But we cannot do that until we are allowing God to stretch us. But we don't want to be stretched. You know why? Because we have become so comfortable being like this. It's not the will of God. Now we got another problem. She has a son. He's a handsome little man, like Brother Caleb. Spoiled, being toted in and out, because he got to be changed. She's happy. Doesn't change. Listen, it doesn't turn a mama's stomach to wipe a nose. You're not hearing me. It doesn't turn a mama's nose or a mama's stomach when she has to clean that baby up when he's messed up so bad. It doesn't turn a mama's stomach when she has to go behind him and clean puke up, or he's eat too much, or he's got too much milk, or whatever. It doesn't, because you know what a mama do? Come here, baby, I'll wipe that nose off. I can wipe your little rear end and your nose at the same time with the same rag. I know some of you mamas would do it. I know I'm alive. I know I'm live. Y'all don't sweat me. I'm bitch. I say what I want to say. Hear me when I tell you, what is the difference between a mama that will throw her child from a burning piece of metal out the window to save her baby and she burn up alive? Did you see the picture on Facebook of the earthquake where a daddy was covering his son and they dug? Over 25,000 people are dead, and they sent me the video last night. The excavator pulled some rocks and stuff away, and the dad was hovering over his son like this, deader than a doornail. And I watched them as they pulled that dead daddy out. And they started noticing something wiggling, and it was the hand of a baby. That baby lived in all of that rubble. And they jerked that baby out, and they were talking in their language, and they started running with that baby. They pulled their daddy to the side. That's what I'm talking about. Where is the church going to be on Judgment Day when we won't even give enough of time to somebody that needs us and stretch us and allow God to stretch us, and we stand before God and listen, look, we'll run to another building and let the babies crumble and die while the earthquake is shaking their world? Can I just tell you the way it is today? Do you think that's the will of God? Listen, I share something on the HAC page on purpose. Listen, one of the greatest men that I know that holds a microphone is Brother Osborne, and he was preaching to a bunch of preachers that said God will spend to buy. God will spend to buy other people. Paul stoned Stephen and died, and right after that, Paul got saved. Saul then, he'll spend men of God and women of God to buy others. I'm not preaching that message because you can't even touch that. So powerful. I sit there and wept like a baby. And when they pulled that baby out, I started running with that baby. So what's the difference, Mama? What's the difference when the people come in here and they don't look like us? And we got our cliques in the church. And we got our little forum no more, and nobody else is welcome in my little clique. This is my family. This is who we talk to when we come to church. You're wrong. You're a hypocrite if you do that. Because there are people that are dying lost and going to hell every single day. And while you've been sitting here, while I've been talking to you the way I'm talking to you, somebody has died and slipped into eternity, and probably some of them are backsliders. And you know my prayer at Outreach Prayer yesterday, sitting right there, was God, prepare us, because we're not prepared. I'm sorry, folks, we're not prepared to take people in right now. You know why we're not, and I know I'm straight with you today. You know why we're not prepared? Because we're too convenient and we're too comfortable where we are. We're not letting God stretch us to a place that then people can come in here and feel what they got. And I'm going to be honest with you. You know why they can't feel and get what they get? It's because when there's trouble and confusion and arguing on the platform, nothing else is going to happen in the house of God. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. No, I'm not sorry. Here's a problem. Now that baby's 12 years old. Now that baby is 15 years old. When she allows it to go to work with daddy, he gets to the field and he says, my head. Read the history. The sun in that area in Shunem gets so hot that it fries the brains of some of those young kids, and they call it a sunstroke. That little boy had a sunstroke, and he said, Daddy, my head. And it is culture that the mother takes care of the baby, and that's why that the daddy said, I don't know what's wrong with him, just take to his mother. You better hear me right here. And the reason that he said that was, I may not have the answer, but Mama does. And the church should always have an answer. When people are sick and distraught and destitute and desperate and live in despair, we should always have something prepared when they get here. Just like you want to have cereal and milk in the bag for the babies for Sunday school. Yes, we do. What's the difference between that and being right here when people need God? We should always be stretched to a point that whatever you need, you can get it before you leave. It is a crying shame that people leave here the same way they come. It ain't God's fault. She holds him until noontime. He dies in her lap. I'm not preaching to you about a dead promise. No, I'm not talking about that. I want to show you this, and I'm done. She lays him on the preacher's bed, calls for a servant. She tells that servant, you saddle that ass, and you hook that dude up, and don't you turn to the left, and don't you turn to the right until you get me to Mount Carmel. Where are we going? I'll tell you to stop when we get there, because even the woman knew where the preacher was at. Her husband said, it's not a new moon, it's not feast days. Why would you bother him? She said, I don't care what time of the season it is. I need a miracle. And here's the problem. When she gets there, She grabs his feet. Gehazi reaches to grab her, and he said, leave her alone. I perceive that she's destitute. He said, listen, going home, I'll come pray for your son. You know what she said? She grabbed his feet. She said, oh no. Oh no. Wherever you go, I'm going. And I'm not leaving Carmel until you load up and go with me. How desperate is a church? How desperate you could pray 2 minutes and walk away. Are you hearing what I'm saying to you? I'm being real with you today. How many times some of us sit there twiddling our thumbs while we're praying for people and you're not doing nothing? Because you're thinking about Walmart and sales and the NASDAQ and crude and oil and what you're going to do tomorrow and what you're going to eat after church. That's not time for that. You're out of order. Here's the problem. I'm closing. What time is it? It's 11:11. Here's the problem. When I read this, I'm not going into I'm not going into the detail. When I read this, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Here's a baby. Now listen to me. Listen to me. You hear me? Here's a son laid on the preacher's bed, lifeless. He died at 12 o'clock at noon. Okay? Now, she's going to get the preacher. They come back. Now, here's a question for the church, and I'm done. What if, I'm being honest with you, I'm going to preach this message everywhere I go. What if she, Mama, can I be me a minute? Sister Rose, tell me I can be me for a minute. Because I'm about to be really real. What if she would have done what most of us would have done? What if she would have forgot about church and forgot about the preacher and forgot about the promise and forgot about the prophetic word and had just called the local funeral home to come pick the boy up, dig a grave in the backyard, and we'll put a pretty headstone that when people pass by, we'll have a story to talk about that I used to have a full house. Because I'm going to put you where the rubber meets the road and myself. That's what we're good at. They backslide. They leave the church. And we kick them to the funeral home. And just say, dig the hole and bury them. Then you know what we do? We wait on the next one for God to send by and we pray through. And if they decide to have hardships and they got problems and they miss a couple services, some of them will say, well, the door, they looked as good. And I've heard preachers say that they look just as good leave as they did come. And you hypocrite. That ain't the will of God. It's hypocrisy. He said, I'll leave you right where you are right now. I'll leave the 99 and go find the one. I'll leave you right now high and dry. Because I know you're safe. I don't have to sit here and mingle with you and talk to you and beg you to stay and not follow that one. No, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to leave you right here, and I'm going to go out there and find that one that I've lost. But what if she would have done what we'd have done? Called the funeral home right after he had drew his last breath and call the insurance and get an insurance policy and put a tomb in the bag and go, let's just have a store and have a party, and every time it's his birthday, then have and then here we are, go back and remember what it used to be like, and the people we used to pray through, and the people we used to baptize, and the people that used to shout and talk in tongues is no longer in the church. And how many times have we got up on Sunday morning and made a phone call? None. But you got to be willing to be stretched. You mad at me? Because I'm going to be honest with you. I'm 50 years old. And the older you get, you start changing. I don't need that Bible stand. I don't need a title. I just need somebody to say, give me life or give me death. Or give me death if I can't give life. Because we are people that submit too easy to the enemy. He puts us in a stronghold. And we say, okay, I give. And then he wins the battle. So are you willing this morning at 11:15 to be stretched? And what I mean by being stretched is, you're going to wake up one morning when you're in love with God and you're going to see some stretch marks. You're going to have a gut like I got. Huh? You're going to start getting weak in the mornings. But that doesn't stop you from being a mother. Because it's a crying shame that churches canceled service tonight to watch the Super Bowl. To give me a break. I could care less if every football in America blew up right now. I could care less if a tornado tore every stadium down, as long as there wasn't nobody in it. I don't care who wins and who loses. I could care less. Because when you got thousands of people that are sitting in a stadium, screaming and hollering and literally fist fighting and calling one another names, that's one thing on a Sunday. Let them do what they do, because the world loveth its own. But the church should be packed. But the problem is we have forgotten the value of souls. And now churches are shutting down, joining the world. Let me say it again, give me a break. I don't need that preacher on my platform. Now, we may argue and fuss after church about who won. We may ask who won the Super Bowl, because that's what is worldwide. Nothing wrong with that, but don't put it ahead of church. You know how corporations get bigger and enlarge? It's when the headship walks through there and go, well, that one ain't doing his job, and that's not doing his job, and that don't show up on time, and that one's always late, and that one's always sick, and this one's this one, this one, this one. You know what they start doing? They give a 3-month period, and they start walking through there, and they start firing everybody that's not an asset. And they start replacing them with people that's on time, people that's going to show up, people's got responsibility, people's got this, and people's is anxious for the job. They need a job. And that's how they expand. They add on to their business. They get rid of all the dead weight. That's why we call it purging. Somebody say purging. So let me ask you a valuable question. Is it the will of God to purge us? It's according to what you're talking about. Because if it's not his will for any of us to perish, then why would he purge us out of the church? It don't make sense to me. But he purges things out of the church, not people. And if people are possessed and consumed with stuff, then people will follow their stuff when he purges the church. It's not his will that you perish. Why would he be calling backsliders to come home? So we've got to be stretched today. I don't know what else to say to you today. I don't know what else to say. Would you stand on your feet today? It's 11:19. Am I too harsh? Am I too rough? Is this too much? No, it's not. It's not too much. because I know you want to do better. I want to do better. I want to do better. I want to do better. When I got in church, you couldn't pull me from the altar because I was an altar worker. I mean, I was an altar worker. They called for prayer meeting, I was there. They called for work party, I was there. Pastor needs something, I was there. Pastor's wife needs something, I was there. I was always involved because I was kingdom-minded. I remember preaching my first message the last 5 minutes. I bet y'all wish y'all was like that now, don't you? You know what I'm saying? I go get people and bring them to church because that was my burden. But somewhere through the years, we lose that. I lost that. I had to regain it back and then lose it again. And it's a fight. It's a fight to hold on to it. I'm being real. It's a fight to hold on to it. But I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be what I am. I didn't ask him to change my message and my ministry. But I'm gung-ho in this thing. I'm dove into this thing. So we're going to be stretched today. Can I take you there for 2 minutes? Give me 2 minutes. Is this okay? Does anybody want me to stop? Please be honest and raise your hand. Please raise your hand, because if you say you want me to stop, I'll stop. Just one person. Just one person. This is how we're stretched, is when we're willing to give to help others. When we are willing to hug everybody's neck and shake everybody's hand and involve everybody in the church. Guest, backslider, hoodlums. When we are all one family. This is how you stretch yourself. Another way you stretch yourself is if somebody was to come tonight and pray through the gift of the Holy Ghost, and that's probably going to happen tonight. And they pray through, and then 3 months from now, you just shine them like they don't even exist. We're good at that. We're good at that. And then all of a sudden, they need the mama. They need the church. They need people to love them, not 2 people in the church, the whole body. To hug them up and grab them and love them and squeeze them and just I love you, proud of you, just something. Go out of your way and do a little something for them. Maybe just call them or text them, but we're so good at our little convenient living. Stretching ourselves to stay another 30 minutes after church to fellowship. To stay a little 30 minutes to pray for somebody in the altar. Just stretching yourself. Okay, here's another one. You ready for this one? I went into a church to preach a while back. I didn't go to the platform. I set my stuff down. The man walked up to me just as pretty as my name is Mike Pullins and asked me to move my stuff. And I'm the guest speaker. And I said, yes, sir, I'm sorry. He said, this is my family seat. That's a wrong spirit. Let's be honest. Don't nobody have a name on these chairs. And let's be honest, you didn't pay for them either. Mark McCracken paid for them. He can sit in either one he wants. But when we go to church with this mentality, this traditional thing, this is my seat. So I thought about this. Can I take it further? I'm going over my 2 minutes. I thought about maybe having a small committee that when we have guests, that we have a designated place in this room for guests. You hear what I just said? Y'all mad at me? You mad at me? Have a designated area for guests. I thought about this last week. You know why? Because we want them to feel a part. Because the first thing that guests want to do is come in and sit on the back row. Because they've just first-time guests, or they know you but don't know you. And here's the problem with sitting in the back, is that door swings 100,000 times in per service. And the kids, blum, 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 and they can't even listen to the preacher because the kids are running across the aisles from aisle to aisle because you moms and dads can't make them sit down. So I'm like, well, maybe we need to get a designated place for them to sit up here. Because when I'm not preaching and I watch that back door, I backslide. Just out, in, and out. You are so disrespectful to the preacher. I don't care who's preaching. I know it's tough. I know the Lord told me you got 21 days to get some things done, and I didn't know he was going to be doing all of this. So are we going to do better? We're going to do better? I dug this thing out of a ground 18 years ago. And I don't want him to have to deal with some of the stuff that I had to deal with coming up for 18 years. Y'all want to shout a while now? This is shouting stuff right here, ain't it? Can I take it one more further? Can I take it? Y'all mad at me? Are y'all upset at me? I'm telling you what I am not telling you because I'm telling you that's what he's saying. Listen to me. You need to be careful who you hang around. Listen to me, young ladies. These dumbbell boys ain't got nothing on the brain but pot and smoking and chasing women and wanting to get you into bed. Leave that trash alone. Ain't the will of God. He gonna ruin your life. Boys, the same way for you. Ruin your life. Leave that mess alone. So you know what you do? Young girls, find you a mentor. Young boys, find you a mentor. And when that mentor looks at you and says you're wrong, don't you get mad. You say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. Are you with me today? I feel good now. I feel like I have preached to a bunch of good, great people today. Listen, I feel like I have preached to people that know how to get in touch with God. I have preached to people today that knows how to travail and talk in tongues and be used in the gifts. And I also am talking to people today that know how to pray people through and deliver people at the altar too. And that's who you are. We got it, but we can't have it without being stretched. Wouldn't it be nice to, Sister Victory, wouldn't it be nice to go to Falmouth and start a HAC? Yeah, because I just found out there's backsliders there. Brother Bennett's like, won't you go over here and start over here and you start over there? I'm like, well, send me some people. I'll go and you go do it. No, I've done it one time. This is what I want you to do. Pastor's coming. I want you to cross you out. Listen, you better listen to me. Don't you listen. Am I too rough? Don't you go to the same person you went to at the beginning of this service and hug her neck and go, it's so good to see you. I love them shoes. Can I borrow them? They will look good with my dress. I would not wear another man's drawers. I'm sorry. I know I'm lying, but I'm telling you, us men don't do that, okay? Do we, Brother Michael? We just don't do that stuff, do we? I don't know what's wrong with you, lady, but it's okay. You go and do your thing, boo. But don't you go to somebody that you went to when Pastor told you or somebody told you or Brother Rayburn told you to go cross out. You go to somebody new and you tell them this thing. You tell them, listen, you look good in stretch marks. I'm not joking with you. You look good, because I'm going to tell you something. My wife didn't hardly get any stretch marks, but she was the cutest little thing when she was pregnant. I just sported her around. She was so stinking cute when she was pregnant. And I just like, you're so pretty when you're pregnant. She was gorgeous when she was pregnant. I don't know what it was. I had to walk through Walmart, boy. Where's my wife right here? Thing cute, boy. Yeah, I got my mark on this one right here. You know what I'm saying? You go to somebody, I want you to go to somebody and tell you ain't never looked so good in your life that you got stretch marks. And I'm not being derogatory because some people have a complex with that. But I'm just saying, I'm talking about spiritual. I'm not talking about fit, I'm talking about spiritual. So go find somebody. Go, you look good stretched. You look good in stretch marks. I want y'all to put that on Facebook. Y'all put everything else, y'all put that on Facebook.